Welcome to Beyond Turning Points podcast. It's wonderful to be here with you again. Today, we're going to explore 4 keys to maintaining consistency in your heart-based or creative work. It's a really important episode today because this topic of consistency, so many people struggle with it. And there's been many times in my life that I struggle with it, and it does come up. Usually something connected to struggling with consistency is doubt. But we're going to have a really good look at this today. It's important because your work is important. What the call of your heart is saying to you is important. And is often this battle between the mind and what the mind wants for you, and then also what your heart wants for you. Now, how do you get those two in unison where the heart and the mind are operating together? Because that's their natural state, right? That's where they need to be so that you can be operating to your full potential. When you're in your full potential, life feels like it's happening for you. You feel like you're in flow, right? I'm sure as you're listening, you can think of a time in your life where you felt like you were in flow. It might be right now. Often for me, flow times are adventure. And I'm going to talk about that later and how that links into my work. And we're going to look at a few different factors. And from my work with people, these come up all the time, right? And I'm involved in group coaching programs for my own business and my own personal growth. And I also have a business coach. Actually, I have 2 that help me with different aspects of my business. And I also have a spiritual coach. And once again, I have 2 of those too who help me. And of course, then I have a network of friends and things like that where these systems keep me going. And so we're going to talk about that. How do you keep going in your business? Because when it's your creative work, when it's your heart-based work, your heart is in it. Yeah, it can often mean there's so much more importance around doing the work because it's almost like some people get caught in the belief that their life depends on it. And certainly your income might depend on it, but there's differentiations you can make. So the first factor that we're going to look at in regards to consistency is your perception of progress. Is your progress real or is it imagined? And so the other morning I was sitting by the fire, and what I was doing, it was a cold morning, and it's a cold morning here today in Sydney. It's actually raining, and I love those cold mornings, and it's made better when I have a fire. So in our house, we have a fireplace, and I have a morning ritual that I do often, which is a cup of tea with some beautiful music and herbal teas, and I sit by the fire. And what I observed was, the kindling, it ignites very quickly and it has a lot of heat and intensity to it, but it disappears very quickly. And that can happen with our false perception of progress, where we're focusing on the wrong thing and perceiving that the outcome is what's important. Whereas you get the outcome by focusing on the process. So how do I get this hot, sustainable fire that heats up my house? Well, by having the slow burn, by getting to those logs that just have that red, deep heat that just keeps going and pulsating for hours with these blue flames. That's where the true power is. Not in the kindling, right? The kindling's kind of flashy and bright and loud, but it doesn't necessarily have the substance of these deep burning logs, which is what I want. So in your perception of progress, it is process that is important to be taking note of. Now I'm going to explain that in a lot more detail to help you. Here's a story to help you visualize that. So this particular story was written by Jean Giono, and he was a French author, and it comes from his short story called The Man Who Planted Trees, which was written in 1953. I'm going to expand. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but I'm going to add in some of my own parts to Jean's story just to illustrate it a bit more. And you can Google it if you like. So it's called The Man Who Planted Trees. And so there was a man who moved to this desolate valley in France, in the Provence region. And each day he would wake up and he would have his breakfast. And then he would go outside and plant trees. And every day he would plant seedlings of acorn trees. And then at the end of the day, he would have his meal. He would have some quiet time by the fire, and then he would go to sleep. The next day, he would wake up and plant trees. And so gradually this desolate valley had more and more seedlings growing in it, and some were more mature than others. Then one day a huge storm came through, wiped out most of the trees. The next day, the man got up and planted more seedlings. And the day after that, he got up, planted more seedlings. And over the period of the next few years, there were more storms and more seedlings died, but some survived. And so suddenly this desolate valley had a few trees growing in it, and it was starting to take shape. But he didn't stop there. The next day, he got up and planted trees. Then over the period of a few years, a forest became apparent. One of the problems of this was that other people saw the value of the forest. And so a logging company came and started logging part of his forest. And each day he would just get up and keep planting trees. And then there was a war, and part of the forest got destroyed in the war. And the government changed. And the logging laws changed. And all throughout the war, all throughout this time, the man had kept on planting trees. So even though there were setbacks, even though parts of the forest were destroyed, he kept planting. Then people started to buy land around the forest because they wanted to be near the forest. And a village grew. And so suddenly the forest was filled with the sound of people laughing and living life, and animals and birds, all because this man just kept planting his trees day after day after day. That wouldn't have happened if he didn't show up time after time after time. And so it was the process of doing that that created the forest. At the end of his life, he was lying in his hut, surrounded by forest, surrounded by people. And he died listening to the sound of the forest that he created, knowing that he was leaving the world a better place because he kept showing up. Process, 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 not outcomes. If you're doing the correct process, you're going to get the outcome. I might like to try and work out and try and be some super hulky middle-aged man, and it's not actually what I'm seeking, but that might be something that I like to create in my life. And if I'm measuring my little muscles every day, I'm looking for the outcome. Whereas if I trust that it's time spent doing the physical work and that the muscles will just come, guess what? The muscles will just come. Now, on a chemical level, how this works is that when you put your, and it's very, 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 very linked to your perception, right? So when you perceive that time is the goal and focused attention is the goal, and so that's your process, you're going to get dopamine because you're like, okay, I turned up, I did the workout, I turned up, I wrote the newsletter, or I turned up, I created the social media post, or I created a piece of art, or I shared my song. That's the outcome. It's not how many people liked your post. It's not how many people loved your song. It's that you created the song and shared it. Yeah. It's that you created the video and shared your art. I just saw a friend of mine who's a phenomenal artist. She created a video recently and it was her first time speaking to camera, and created a beautiful video and people loved it. And she got to show her art, right? The outcome is that the outcome that she focuses her perception on is that she did it and released it. It's not how many people that like it. By continuing to release the videos, you naturally get better. So what happens then is when she's committed, her name's Susan, when Susan's committed to releasing the video, she gets dopamine just for showing up. Now, dopamine is super important for you to manage, right? Dopamine, some people call it the feel-good molecule. If you listen to Dr. Andrew Huberman, he'll describe it that it's more related to motivation, reward, anticipation. So dopamine, it creates more motivation. It's been essential for human survival. So when I perceive that something is in my benefit and I am progressing, then I get dopamine, which creates more motivation to keep doing the thing, right? Now, if I perceive I'm not making progress, and so this can happen very easily if you're focused on the outcomes rather than the process. When I focus on the outcomes and I don't get the outcome, so let's say I launch a workshop, which I'm going to be doing in the next few months, and the workshop doesn't get the sign-up numbers, and I'm focused on the numbers, and I feel deflated. What is going to happen is my brain will release norepinephrine. Now, the impact of norepinephrine on the brain is that my thoughts will start to head towards I should quit, right? So it impacts my alertness, it impacts my focus, my stress, my ability to be motivated. And the reason it's doing that is because it's trying to ensure human survival. So this comes very much back to a primal age where if we perceive something was good for us and good for our tribe, then it was beneficial, evolutionary wise, for our brain to continue doing that task. If we perceived that the task was detrimental or that it wasn't making progress, it was beneficial for us to stop doing that process. And that's how these chemicals, dopamine and norepinephrine, impact our brain. Dopamine creates more motivation to keep going because you perceive something is of benefit or you are making progress. Norepinephrine, it makes you retract from the task. Yeah. You control that with your perception. So here's what I suggest you do. You focus on showing up. Did I show up? That's the important piece, right? You might be somebody that works really well with schedules. And in my life, there was a time I didn't like schedules because I thought that was slavery. But actually now I know that me following a schedule that's suited to my needs creates freedom, creates what I want in my life. So I encourage you, create a schedule and then show up to the schedule, right? Each time you show up, you're going to get dopamine, which creates more motivation. Once you're doing that, you're going to see the changes. You're going to see the results because you're focusing on process. All right, that's the first key to consistency, is focusing on process. You're going to get dopamine. And if you think of the man who planted trees, it was because he showed up and he got to create this forest that impacted so many people. And he got to die with the sound of the forest in his ears. Yeah, the nature of the forest in his heart. What a beautiful life. And we are all mortal. We are going to die, right? So what you have in your time on earth is your time and your attention. What are you going to do with your time and attention? This is really important. You don't want to forget that you're mortal. Right? I learned that lesson. So you may or may not know I had a near-death experience, and one of the things it taught me was to value my time on earth. And I don't want to spend my time stuck in my head. It happens, but I don't want to spend the majority of that time stuck in my head walking around thinking of things that shouldn't have happened and did, or things I haven't done. I want to spend that time being alive, right? So remembering that I'm mortal and my time is valuable, and that my time and attention is what determines my experience and my perceptions around that, that helps me feel alive. So really important, process over outcomes. The second key that we're going to look at is self-perception. So in my profile, I'll put in the show notes, I'll put a link to ashparrow.com, which has all these resources that I may talk about today. One of the things around self-perception is your inner critic. I have a very, let's say, domineering inner critic, and I've had to learn how to get it to take a back seat, right? Because there's been many times in my life where it's operated as a handbrake. So there's been things I wanted to do, but then doubt has crept in, and things that you might identify with: self-sabotage, self-judgment, fear of failure, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, procrastination. These are all symptoms of your inner critic. And what's your inner critic trying to do? It's trying to protect you. So when you get caught up in that inner critic cycle, it makes you retract, it makes you constrict. It prevents you from doing the things that you truly want to do in your heart. And it's doing it because it wants you to survive. Right? So it's a bit like a workplace health and safety officer who is over obsessed with risk assessment, risk identification, and avoiding risks. That's what your inner critic system is doing, right? It doesn't want you to threaten your tribe by doing a role that's different, because humanity survived through human beings being in community and working together. And it was more important to survive in those primal times than to thrive. Yeah. So the mind sort of has this base level of, you operate in survival mode, right? That's what the mind's main operation. When it perceives threat, that's what it reverts to, is survival mode. And so if you're releasing work, be it creative or your heart-centered work, whatever it might be, and you're putting yourself out in the world, that normally requires courage and vulnerability. When your mind perceives that you've been courageous or that you've been vulnerable, it will often come in with this inner critic. It'll come in with these inner critic. Let's use symptoms, strategies to describe them, right? So it was, you might notice yourself, it's like, oh, well, I didn't do that very well, and I could have done this better, and I could have done that better. And then you might go into this hole of self-judgment and not do the things that you were doing before because of the self-judgment, right? That's your inner critic trying to protect you from threatening yourself or threatening the tribe. If the tribe failed, or if you failed, you would likely die. Humanity would die out. So you are actually carrying the weight of humanity on your shoulders when you be vulnerable or courageous. That's the mind's perspective. It doesn't know the difference. And so there's ways you can learn to work with that so that you change how you relate to your inner critic. If you can do that, everything changes. So to help you do that, there's the free inner critic quiz in my profile. There's also a micro course, really simple, 10 modules that are short, but you will learn a lot about your inner critic. And there's strategies and tools in there to help you manage your inner critic so that you build a relationship with it and you work with it, right? If the inner critic didn't have benefits, evolutionary wise, it would have been evolved out of our human structure. However, it does have benefits, right? So if you can learn to work with that and be cooperating with that aspect of your mind, you're going to find life a lot easier. Doorways are going to open up. You're going to share more of your work. You're going to back yourself more, right? And the more you back yourself, the more you learn about yourself. The more you learn about yourself, the more you can be yourself. The more you can be yourself, the more you back yourself because you get positive feedback from the world. And it creates this cyclone, right? This tornado of you being yourself and backing yourself. And you're going to hit speed bumps. They come up for everybody. You know, I went through a considerable speed bump just a few weeks ago. There was a minor speed bump yesterday. My inner critic came in, right? I messed up, not good enough, should have done better, all these different aspects of that. But because I've done a lot of inner critic work and I have lots of tools, those things don't impact me as much as they used to. So in the past, it might have been literally a full-on handbrake. The car comes to a stop. In fact, I might even lose the keys. Not be able to start the car again for days, weeks, months, years. I literally have worked with people who have been stuck on their artistic work for decades because of their inner critic. I don't want that for you. You can work on it. So free inner critic quiz is there for you to help you with that. And there's also the micro course, $17, right? $17 to change your life and move forward with your inner critic. It's well worth it. And you're going to have those skills for life, right? This will change your life. That's the second key factor in being consistent. Know your inner critic, have a positive, healthy relationship with it. In toxic relationship, with your inner critic, you're going to be in self-sabotage, procrastination, self-judgment, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, all those things. You can have a healthy relationship with perfectionism. When you're in a healthy relationship with perfectionism, it actually creates higher quality work. Yeah. When you're in a negative relationship with your perfectionism, you put things off forever. They just keep getting put off and off and off because it's not good enough. It can be very subtle in your mind that those things are playing out. All right, let's have a look at the third factor. And it's a counter. I'll try that word again, shall I? It's a counterintuitive idea. And this third factor, I'm going to call space. Space in our lives was one of the most powerful, inspiring, motivational things you can have. And it's no mystery. Well, it is a mystery. It's a curious mystery, shall I say. But it's not a secret. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not a secret that we are made up of mostly space, right? Yes, some people say, well, our body's mostly 80% water. But even those water molecules, they're mostly space. So when you have more space in your life, you're connecting more to your true nature. Historically, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, maybe millions of years, depending on what you believe around history and the origins of humans, we've had a lot of space in our life. The way we live at the moment, we have very little cognitive space. We can live in high density areas. We can live disconnected from nature. And we've been trained culturally to avoid space. We've been trained that productivity comes from commitment and focus and being on deck all the time, right? That's counterproductive. So what you can do to help yourself be consistent is bring in more space for rest, bring in more space for play, bring in more space for freedom, not having a plan for a particular day or week, and just doing whatever it is you want to do. From a personal perspective, I can sit at this desk and work and focus and do that for many hours, and I can do that for many days, and I will burn out. That doesn't help my consistency. What I've actually learned about myself, and everybody has their own rhythm that works for them. What I've learned about myself is that being away from my desk is one of the most highly productive things I can do. So I mentioned at the beginning of this episode around adventure. I love adventure. I get inspired by going on adventures, by hitting the road, by meeting people, by playing music, by doing events, by being out in nature and being with the divine and not knowing what's going to happen. There's something that happens in me where I become more alive when I do that. I get more insight. I become a better coach. I'm more able to help people with their inner world when I do those things. So one of the secrets to consistency is having space. You can schedule that in. You can spontaneously do it. Obviously, there's a balance. Right? I remember one of the times I learned about balance. Today is the 5th anniversary of my wife and my wedding. Yeah. And when we'd been seeing each other for 18 months, I got to this point one day, and even though the relationship had been phenomenally beautiful, I split up from her. And what I realized over the next week, one was that I really missed her and it was hurting. But two, because of that space, I realized that in my head, I had got myself into a little bit of a whirlpool thinking, how do I balance everything? So I was living in Brisbane, Prue was living in Sydney, and we both had a child, and we were both doing shared parenting, and we were juggling work, children, for me, music career, and I freaked out. I got to this point where I was like, I don't know how to balance all this. I don't know how to do this. And I just freaked out. And so in the space after that, what I realized was, actually, I'll tell you how it happened, was I was standing in my house in Bulimba, and it was up on this hill, and I could look over the houses and backyards of the neighbors. And it was very dry. It was a time of drought. And I was standing there, and this thought popped into my head, which was, the balance is there's droughts and floods. Sometimes I'm going to be a parent a lot more. Sometimes I'm going to be a partner a lot more. Sometimes I'm going to be a musician a lot more. Sometimes I'm going to have to focus on my work a lot more. That's the balance. There's droughts and there's floods. And so that insight came from space, having space. And so then I rang Prue up, and she didn't answer her phone, and I left a message, and just to let you in a bit on our inner world, I left a song. I sang her a song, and it was like, I love you, it's true. And Prue, when she listened to the message, she sent me a message back saying, I can't do this. And she thought I was just ringing up because I wanted to be her friend. Whereas I was ringing up saying, take me back, please, please. I've seen the light, take me back. It took a while to get the message through, but she took me back, and yeah, married 5 years today. How beautiful. How beautiful. So the balance is droughts and floods. Space is productive. Say it to yourself as you're listening to the podcast. We'll say it together. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Space is productive, right? Play is productive. These things benefit you. They benefit your work. Schedule them in. Have them in there, right? You're trying to create a sustainable system, and being consistent with your space, that helps. In my working week, every Thursday morning is adventure morning. For me, that means getting out of the office, going out in nature, not having a plan generally. Sometimes I catch up with friends, but generally it's go out, be on my own. And I love it. And I'd be more productive with my work because of that. All right. So if you're finding it useful, wonderful, wonderful. So glad. And let's have a look. For number 4, one of the keys to consistency, and I'm going to go to a bit of depth in this one, is knowing that it's beneficial for things to be challenging at times. Most people go for easy, yeah, but that's not part of our human makeup, right? There's part of us that loves challenge. There's part of us that loves achievement, right? That sense of achievement creates dopamine, which creates more motivation. So one way of describing this to you, as far as our human nature loving challenge, right? There's this video on YouTube, which you can search for. If you type in Melanesian bare hand shark hunter, you watch this phenomenal video about this Melanesian man who looks like he's in his 50s. And it talks about in the video how the members of his tribe think he's too old. But what he does is he goes out in a dugout canoe, and he has a club, and he has a rattle that he shakes in the water to attract sharks. And then he catches them and kills them with his bare hands. So he has this system, right? And he's out here in the water, it's open ocean. They show the shark coming, and they show him how he catches the shark, and it's pouring rain, and it's amazing. That is our human nature, to be part of nature. It is our human nature to experience challenge. And in our culture, we have developed this comfortable way of living that is actually having a negative impact on us. So a friend of mine recently, he's had quite a few difficult things happen in his life. And he realized that he had to go and get a job that was quite hard manual labor, not easy working conditions, not what he would have picked for himself, but life circumstances presented this job, and he had to take it. It was the best option available to him at the time. And it's very challenging for him. But he said to me the other day, he actually feels alive. He realized that for 4 years he's been depressed. And now doing this hard, challenging work, he's feeling alive. Things don't have to be easy. Things don't have to be in flow, right? Things are allowed to be challenging. When they are, you're going to connect more deeply to your inner power, and that's going to have a flow-on effect to your whole ecosystem, your family, the people you work with, people you work for, whatever it is that you do, your kids, your relationships. Having challenge in your life is healthy, right? We don't want to hit the stage where we're overwhelmed without support. Yeah, and so for me, one of those lessons is having support. So I mentioned, I have great coaches, I have spiritual guides, I have this support network around me. And if you feel like you need that for your work, little plug here. Yes, one-to-one coaching is available with me. If this is resonating with you, feel free to message me the word inspired on any socials, or you can email me. And all you have to do is say inspired. I'll get back to you. Yeah. If you're interested in workshops with me, message me the word inspired. I will get back to you. Yeah, I'm not some identity that is just a 2D screen. Yeah, I will get back to you. That's my commitment to you. If you're listening to this podcast and you message me, I will get back to you. And my goal is to help you create what it is in your life. And if that's the inner work around how to navigate what's happening for you internally, be it in your heart or your head, or if that's the outer work around your heart-centered work or creative work and how you expand that in the world and reach more people, that's what I do. That's what I help people with. So coming back to this concept about things should be easy. No, you need to have the challenge. And to put it in a more spiritual light, yeah, what happens is that the angels are always watching us. Yeah, they're moving pieces, and we don't know that they're moving those pieces to help us move along in life and create what it is that we want. However, you need to activate your warriorness or your warrior-ness, right? So that warrior that you have, be it female or male energy, you need to activate that. And when you come into your warrior energy, what happens is the angels are watching, they're moving pieces. And at some point, those angels are going to come down with the rewards for acknowledging you for doing what was right for you, for standing up for yourself, standing up for your truth, for standing up the work that you want to do in the world. You might have some success at the beginning and then it might get hard. Yeah. That's when you activate the warrior. That's when you be consistent and you keep showing up. Keep going. You're going to get there. Keep planting the trees day after day after day. Take care of yourself in the process. Have some space, right? Do work with others. It doesn't have to be me. It can be work with anybody that inspires you or that you feel would lead you well. You know, a friend of mine, Nikki Convine, phenomenal singer. Yeah, and if you've listened to music I've been involved in, you may have heard Nikki singing on some of those tracks. So Nikki, for the past, I'd say, year and a half, has been consistently putting videos of her music on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. And she's got this beautiful song that's coming out. It's called Golden Age. I'm going to link to Nikki's Spotify in the show notes. And this particular song, right? So Nikki has been releasing songs and I follow her on TikTok and we're connected in real life as well. So we chat on the phone and things like that. But you know, some of her videos were only getting 30, 50, 60 views on TikTok, 200 views, 300 views. But Nikki was able to let go of the views as an outcome, focus on the process, the production value or quality of her songs has improved because she's just kept going, right? Like that research that you may have read about in James Clear's book, what's that called again? Atomic Habits, where he talks about the research where a lecturer told one group of students to take one perfect photo and another group of students to take 100 photos, and the group of students who took 100 photos, the quality of their photos was better than the one perfect photo. And so Nikki has embodied that, right? And her latest song, The Golden Age, on TikTok has 250,000 views, right? That's a viral video, particularly in music world, right? It can be really difficult on social media to get people to really engage with your music videos. Nikki's done that. And that's done from planting a tree day after day after day. It's a beautiful song. I love it. And it's quite unique too. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. If I release this podcast and it hasn't come out, the link will be to Nikki's artist profile on Spotify, so you can check that out. I'll also put her TikTok on there too. So one last thing around things not being easy. When you fail, that provides feedback. I'm going to say that again. When you fail, that provides feedback, and that feedback is so valuable, right? Most people avoid the challenging things, but they're missing out on the feedback that makes their work of a higher level. Yeah. So if you're working with people and you're afraid you're going to mess them up, okay, there's going to be times where you do get it wrong. If you're creating songs and you're afraid that people aren't going to like the song, that's not fear of failure. That's fear of criticism, right? So I want to delineate between those two, right? Are you fearing failure, or are you fearing criticism? If you're fearing criticism, that's linked to your inner critic. Go do some inner critic work. If you're fearing failure, that's because your perspective is distorted and you believe that the failure is a bad thing. I would rather you try and fail and learn and grow and be better at your craft, whatever that is, than avoid it altogether. Go out, take the 100 photos, not the one. Be prepared to fail. If you have difficulty showing up for that, one-to-one coaching works a treat. There's a link in my profile. Right? Group coaching. I'm involved in group coaching program myself as a participant, and it's so powerful. I learn from other people's failures. I learn from my own, learn from being human together. Right? The isolation can be really damaging. So feel free, message me on socials. If you message me the word inspired, I know that you're interested in workshops or one-to-one, I'm going to get back to you. Feel free to share with me what work that you do in the world. It inspires me to see people doing the work that they do. That's the work of their heart. Yeah. You might help people, you might be creative, whatever it is. I love hearing from you. And there's resources. There's the inner critic quiz for you. There's the visibility quiz, which is for heart-centered professionals who want to reach more people with their work. If you're a creative, a wellness practitioner, a coach, a therapist, a healer, or anybody that does good work for other people, and you want more people to know about it, take the visibility quiz, because you'll see where you are out of 4 levels. And, as you progress through levels, you have more and more skills as well as systems set up. And so the idea of that quiz is you can see where you are now and you can see what your next steps are. So that's our podcast for today. The 4 keys to maintaining consistency. I'm going to just go over them quickly. So number 1 was progress. What are you focusing on? Process or outcome? If you focus on outcome, you're going to encounter norepinephrine more, which makes you want to quit. If you focus on process, you're going to get dopamine, which makes you more and more motivated. Self-perception, how you perceive yourself and your relationship with the inner critic, super important. That is one of the keys to moving forward with what you want to do, is having a good, healthy relationship with your inner critic. The third one was space. That space is motivating. Space is inspiring. Having space in your life is being productive. Schedule it in. So because your mind is just going to love to fill up your time with times that you should be productive. Is that helpful? I think it is. Yeah. Space. You are made of space. And if you have that in your schedule, you're just reflecting your human nature. Right? And the number 4 was that things shouldn't be easy. You should have a certain amount of challenge. Yeah. And that having a support network around you or people that you work with can help you manage that challenge. Would love to hear what your biggest takeaway is from today's podcast. Feel free to message me. Feel free to put it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Feel free to click subscribe if you're on Spotify. Follow on Spotify. Actually, subscribe YouTube. And yeah, there's always videos going up on TikTok and Instagram, LinkedIn, all those kind of things. So sending my love. Thanks for coming along on the journey of staying consistent. And yeah, I'm picturing things happening for you through that consistency.